This is Histories and Mysteries Uncovered. I'm Jessica.
And I'm Ashley. And on this week's episode, Jessica's going to go first because her story is awful and mine is uplifting. So we want to leave you on a happy note. She is doing I already forgot it.
Purrington Family Massacre.
I wanted to say Percival. And I was like, that's not right.
It's not right.
And I'm doing the Perseverance of José Alvarenga.
Beautiful. Wonderful.
Yeah. She's going to go first and bring us all down. And I told her that she's not allowed to do true crime anymore. So that is my gift to you, dear listeners.
In my defense, I was sobbing while I was reading and researching.
That's worse because that means it's really bad.
It's really bad. And something very similar, but not similar, but very similar just happened apparently this week in Canada.
Oh.
So like a poor family were murdered. They had a 2-month-old baby.
Oh.
And they were murdered by a kid that they were having stay at their house.
Oh, God.
So.
Yeah, so you said your story was awful.
Yes.
And American politics are making me really sad right now. So I was like, I need an uplifting story.
Yeah.
I'm
glad. So yeah, so we're role reversing this week.
Yes.
Because I'm gonna go first because I don't want to bring you all down at the end and then say jokes because that's really insensitive.
Yeah.
So here we go. It's to preface, it's a very old story. It is from 1820s. No, early 1800s, sorry.
Okay.
So it's older. So there wasn't a heck of a lot of information about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I did my best. And I'm glad it's a little shorter because it sucks.
My favorite podcast, other than ours, Let's Go to Court, is finishing. They're done. They're ending their podcast. But they always say old-timey disclaimer.
Oh.
Meaning it's an old story, so you can't get as much information. So it's an old-timey disclaimer.
Oh, that's cute. I love that. I love that. So I'm not going to say it, though, because I don't want to get copyrighted.
Yeah.
But it was old. So I used All That's Interesting, B985 FM. I don't know. Do History and Touring Maine History. And I know a lot of the true crime stuff that we talk about should realistically just automatically come with a disclaimer and a content warning. But more specifically, my story involves infanticide? Infanticide?
The death of an infant.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It involves the death of an infant and small children. So
all the trigger warnings.
Let's hop on in. Don't want to. So the Purrington family massacre, it occurred in a tranquil town of Augusta until the Purrington massacre happened. Known by the Native Americans as Cushnook at first, this Kennebec Valley village gained notoriety as a fur trading hub in 1628 when white colonists from Plymouth Colony established a trading post there. But for decades, white settlers were forced out of the valley due to conflicts with Native Americans. After their return to the valley in 1754, the colonists erected Fort Western. The white population in the valley quickly increased. A thriving lumber sector accompanied the fur trade, and in 1796, a bridge over the Kennebec River connected Augusta with the surrounding communities. As many people are aware, I am not one of them. Up until 1820, the state of Maine was part of Massachusetts.
Oh.
Ashley
I didn't
didn't
know
know that
that.
either.
No.
I don't know why that article was like, as many people are aware. It was
No.
probably the main website.
Probably.
According to census records, the population peaked at 1,200 people in the early 1800s. 10 of the residents were members of the Purrington family. Captain James Purrington, a Revolutionary War veteran, and his wife Betsy grew up in coastal Maine communities near Brunswick. After marrying, the couple had 12 children, 4 of whom died as babies.
Aww.
Yeah. By 1805, the Purrington family had moved up the Kennebec River to Augusta. James purchased a farm a mile and a half north of town, and the children aged from infancy to 19 years old, and they helped run the farm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, quite a difference.
Yeah.
Betsy Purrington frequently confided in her neighbor, the midwife, Martha Ballard, when they had their regular tea times. Betsy was concerned for James. She had once discovered her husband sharpening a knife, and she started to worry that James was going to take his own life. And her suspicions were validated. Early in July 1806, James Purrington wrote his brother a letter outlining his intentions. He wrote, "I am going on a long journey." He asked his brother to care for his sons and closed his letter with an ominous instruction: "Divide what is left, for I am no more." And Betsy had found the letter before James mailed it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But I mean, how do you go from your husband sharpening a knife to, I think he's going to unalive himself?
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know how you go from point A to point B if he's not doing anything in between.
Yeah. Yeah.
James vowed he had no intention of taking his own life. He persuaded Betsy that he had a feeling of his approaching death. So, however, there were additional indications that James Purrington was having some problems. The farm was in decline well into its first summer. Remember, they only moved there
Oh,
a year ago.
yeah.
And Purrington would frequently fret to his neighbors that he might run out of food for his family and hay for his cattle.
Oh, that's really stressful.
Yeah. However, nobody in Augusta's tranquil community anticipated James Purrington to massacre his whole family. On July 8th, 1806, James sharpened his axe and he read the Bible late at night after his wife and kids went to bed. At some point during the night, James Purrington started massacring his whole family. James Purrington Jr., 17 years of age, awoke at around 2 in the morning to his mother's screams. Leaping off the bed, the boy hurried into the main room. When he got there, he saw his father holding a bloody axe.
Oh my gosh.
James Sr. struck his son on the back with the axe. He then turned to another son, which allowed James Jr. to flee and make his way to a neighbor's house. Upon arriving at the Purrington property, the neighbors discovered nearly all of the family had passed away.
Oh my gosh.
The scene was noted by Martha Ballard in her journal. She wrote that about 3 in the morning, neighbors knocked on her door and told her that, quote, Captain Purrington had murdered all his family except his son James, unquote.
That poor son, the surviving one. I can't even imagine.
Yeah. So this next part is really detailed. So Ballard stopped by the house in the morning. She said it was the most shocking scene that she has ever seen in this part of the world. In the bedroom, Betsy Purrington had been brutally murdered. Her head was almost completely detached from her body. Anna, who was 10 years old, was at her feet. The oldest daughter, Polly, was 19, and she was discovered dead in a different room. Nearby, 15-year-old Martha lay injured, her head leaning on her 18-month-old sister Louisa's corpse.
Oh,
Although Martha had survived the night, her injuries would eventually cause her to pass away 3 weeks later.
oh gosh.
Benjamin, the 12-year-old brother, was lying lifeless in front of the fireplace, while brothers Nathaniel and Nathan, who were 8 and 6 years old, had their throats cut.
Oh.
James Purrington Sr. had also slashed his own throat with a razor after killing his family. After moving the bodies to the barn, the neighbors cleaned them. Numerous people came to the crime scene, and the son who survived, now an orphan, was
Oh,
taken in by the Ballards.
oh, that's so nice.
Yeah. It was said by those that saw the scene that it appeared as though fights were put up against their
Oh,
father.
oh my God.
So they were fighting so hard.
I can't imagine.
No. News of the massacre quickly spread to other areas, and there was a jury of inquest that was put together for this, which I don't understand because the perpetrator is now deceased.
Yeah, and it's pretty obvious who it was.
Yeah. So I'm not really sure why they needed a jury, but these are the members that made up the jury. Theophilus Hamlin, James Child, Kendall Nichols, Shubale Pitts, Caleb Heath, Jonathan Perkins, Oliver Pollard, Samuel Bond, Ezekiel Page, Ephraim Ballard Jr., and John Eveleth were the members of the jury of inquest that Elias Craig, the coroner, put together. Purrington killed and murdered his wife and children of his malice afterthought, the jury said, and as a felon did voluntarily kill and murder himself. The remains were transported to the meeting house by the selectmen, but James's body was kept outside the porch and held there with his axe and razor prominently displayed on the coffin. Hundreds of people from the surrounding areas attended the funeral, which was held the day after this horrible tragedy. The minister had a podium erected up at Market Square. Daniel Stone prayed, and Methodist Joshua Taylor gave a sermon to the assembly. The bodies of the 7 victims, supported by bearers and attended by pallbearers, were in front of the coroner and his jury, followed by James, the surviving son, and other family members and individuals. And the corpse of James Sr. was dragged behind on a wagon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. After crossing the bridge, the funeral procession proceeded to the cemetery via Augusta's main streets. James Purrington Jr., the last surviving member of the family, followed the coffins of Betsy Purrington and her 7 departed children. Now, this is kind of where there was a little bit of disconnect because one spot said the funeral was held the next day, but at this point, Martha's still alive.
Hmm.
So, because she didn't die for a few weeks, right?
Yeah.
So that's where a little bit of disconnect is. And there's another part in here as well where it says days after the crime, but It also sounded in this article that it was happening while they were burying the bodies.
Okay.
So I don't get it. But
Yeah.
it said one headline said horrid murder, another one said horrid massacre, and a row of coffins was printed next to the headline in both of these broadsheets.
Oh.
So it's odd because it sounds like the article was when it was happening, and another one kind of made it sound like it was days later. So
Yeah.
it's
Huh.
just, I don't know. But
Yeah.
that's where a lot of the disconnect is as well.
Gotcha.
Following the victims' burials, the mourners crossed the highway and interred James Purrington Sr. in an area outside of the cemetery, away from his wife and children, together with his axe and razor.
Huh.
According to local legend, James's body was exhumed covertly the next night in the dark for Bowdoin College's scientific advantage.
Oh.
Even after all of this, no one could come to a conclusion as to why this actually happened. A letter was discovered in which Captain Purrington rambled on about his religious beliefs and expressed his wish for his family's future happiness. The mourners concurred that James Purrington had a fair reputation and good character. Steady, correct, and industrious habits were his. So, how did they miss the fact that they had a murderer among them?
Yeah, and like a horrible mass murderer of his
Yeah.
own family.
According to the Maine State Library Bulletin, the community came to the sole conclusion that Purrington was acting like a maniac when he did the deed, which they called an attack of hereditary insanity. The idea that James Purrington intended to murder his family after realizing he was a terrible farmer and parent was too awful to entertain. Purrington's domestic abuse outburst was a planned act rather than a transient descent into madness.
Interesting. What do you think about that?
I think, like, these other family massacre stories, that they couldn't bear the fact that they were doing terribly financially.
Mm-hmm.
He was worried about not having enough food to feed his family,
Mm-hmm.
right? So he was even worried that he didn't have money for the cows because they had had such a terrible year. They moved there to have a better life, and he wasn't following through. And he was a war veteran as well, right? So he has a lot of pride, I
Yeah.
find, right? Especially for back then.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very prideful thing. It still is.
Mm-hmm.
So his ego was bruised, his pride was bruised.
Yeah, and then rather than taking another ding to the ego.
Yeah. So I don't know if it was PTSD triggered,
Yeah.
but it's hard because there's not a lot of concrete in between, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't know if there was domestic abuse or if he was a hard ass of a father. Like
Right.
you don't get that
Yeah.
type of stuff back then in the news articles.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to say
Yeah.
because you don't know what happens behind closed doors even then.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What do you think?
I agree with you 100%. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's all there is to it. Like I said, it was short. It was based off of a news article. So
It's crazy, man. I just don't understand like with these family annihilators, why don't you just take yourself? You don't have to take your whole family with you.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You're punishing yourself. You don't have to punish everybody else.
Yeah.
And that
Ugh.
poor boy that survived.
Yeah. I wonder whatever happened to him. I'm sure they didn't have it in the newspapers back then, but I wonder what happened to him. I hope he lived a really great life and had a really great family and died really happy.
Absolutely.
Ugh. All right. Well, my story's a bit more uplifting.
Oh, good.
I got my sources from All That's Interesting and The Guardian.
Whoop, whoop.
Jose Salvador Alvarenga was born in 1975 to Jose Ricardo Orellana and Maria Julia Alvagara. His father owned a flour mill and a store in the Salvadorian city Garita Palmaria. And he had several siblings all over the world when he was older. He had several brothers in the United States. And in 2002, at the age of 27, Jose left El Salvador for Mexico to work as a fisherman. He quickly found employment, but so I'm unsure in this part because one, kind of like you, one source said that he found employment with Guillermo Rodriguez, but then like right away. But then another one said in 2012 that he had only been a fisherman for 4 years.
Oh,
So I'm not sure. So either way, at this point, he had been a fisherman. Amount of years unknown. And he was employed by Guillermo Rodriguez. And in 2012, Jose was supposed to go with his usual fishing partner, Ray Perez, to go on a 30-hour fishing trip. Their goal was to catch sharks, marlins, and something called a sailfish, which apparently were very lucrative fish to catch. So this was supposed to be a really good trip, a really good payout for Jose, Ray, and Viramino. At the last minute, his fishing partner, Ray Perez, had to back out. But Jose was an experienced fisherman, so he wasn't super worried about it. And he picked another fisherman on his boss's roster named Ezekiel Corroba. He had never met or spoken to this young man, but he figured it was a quick trip and they weren't going too far off land, so it would be fine. So there they were, Jose and Ezekiel, setting off on November 17th for their fishing trip. They were on a 24-foot fiberglass skiff boat with a small motor. I also looked up what a skiff boat was because I was not sure. And apparently a skiff boat can be any boat that doesn't have a flat bottom. So it really didn't help.
Like literally any boat in existence.
Yeah, and they said that generally it's like a smaller boat with a smaller motor that's used for like fishing or recreation. So,
Okay.
they took with them fishing stuff, an electronic radio, and a large ice box. And when I say large ice box, I'm talking the size of a refrigerator to fill with fish that they caught.
That's insane.
Yeah. And before too long, they had caught so much fish that it was overflowing their ice box. So, like, this was a great trip for them.
That's amazing.
Yeah, they were super stoked until tragedy struck. They were hit by a massive storm. A storm so strong that they couldn't see where the land was through the rain. They tried to maneuver through the storm, and they ended up having to dump all of their fish overboard to lighten the load.
Oh, that sucks so much.
Yeah, because they were hoping that if they lightened the boat, it would be easier to maneuver.
Oh, that sucks so much.
Yeah. Jose was able to make out a call on the radio to his boss for help before the radios went dead. He called out, and apparently they called him the boss Willie. So they called out, Willie, the motor is ruined. Willie said, calm down, give me your coordinates. Jose said, we have no GPS, it's not functioning. Willie said, lay anchor. Jose said, we have no anchor. Willie said, okay, we're coming to get you. Jose said, come now, I'm really getting fucked out here. They tried in vain to get back to the shore, but the engine was damaged. They didn't have oars or an anchor or lights.
It seems really unsafe.
Yeah, apparently Jose said that before he had left, he noticed that they didn't have an anchor in the boat, but he didn't think, he was like, it's no big deal. Like 30-hour quick fishing trip in and out.
No, the safety shit's there for a reason, bud.
Yeah. So They began drifting out to sea. During the storm, most of their fishing gear was damaged or lost, so they were left with very few supplies and very little food. They tossed all the ice and the extra gas overboard and tried to make an anchor from about 50 bayous on the boat. Bayous, that's not right. Buoys.
Buoys?
Buoys.
It's like, that
Buoys.
seems like
50 buoys, not bayous. Bayous are like swamp areas. 50 buoys. This storm lasted for 5 days.
Oh, holy crap. I thought you were going to say 5 hours.
No, 5 days.
Oh, shit. I would be like dying of starvation.
Yeah. His employer organized a search party, but after 2 days of searching, it was called off because they just couldn't see through the storm. And it was dangerous for them to be out there too. So Jose and Ezekiel were lost with no help in sight, and they needed to find a way to survive. Jose knew that they needed food, and without any fishing equipment, they needed to find a way to catch fish. So he would lean against the boat, put both of his hands into the water, and wait. And when a fish swam between his hands, he would shut his hands really quick and dig his fingers into the fish scales and throw the fish up on the boat. And he wasn't very good at this at first, but over time, he got better at it.
That's so funny.
I know. They would then gut and clean the fish, leave pieces out to dry. So they would eat dried fish and raw fish. Sometimes they'd catch sea turtles and eat them and drink their blood.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because they were starving to death and they were dehydrated. So sometimes they would drink the turtle blood to help them.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And sometimes flying fish would land in their boat. So that was lucky for them. But they ate raw and dried fish over and over and over. And they also sometimes caught seabirds that they would eat. But again, it would be raw. After a few days, Jose had to start drinking his own urine and encouraged Ezekiel to do the same. He said it was salty, but not revolting. He said he was so hungry at this point, he was eating his own fingernails. And he would scoop up as Jessica was chewing on her fingernail.
Immediate stop.
He said he would also scoop up jellyfish and swallow them whole. He said it burned the top part of his throat, but it wasn't so bad. After the storm, so this was all throughout the time they were at sea, but like right after the storm, they had taken that ice box that was the size of the refrigerator and they turned it over. And so they mainly stayed under that to stay warm. So through this whole time they were at sea, they would kind of stay under there to get warm and they'd come out here and there. After about 14 days at sea, Jose was inside of the icebox and heard some rain hit the top of the icebox. They needed that freshwater rain. And Jose had been making a water collection system. So when they heard that first rain, they ran out to start collecting the rain. And they opened their mouth and, just got as much water as they could. The bucket was filling up, so they were drinking out of it. And then they decided to ration out the rest that they collected. So this was like a miracle for them. As days turned into weeks at sea, they found supplies floating all around them. They grabbed water bottles when they could, to catch more rain. And at one point, they found a plastic bag. When they got it on board, they opened it up and found gum that had already been chewed, but they split it and ate it anyway.
Ew.
They found half a head of cabbage, carrots, and a quart of spoiled milk, but they ate it and drank it all anyway. Jose recalled during their time at sea that they talked about their moms. He said, "We would talk about our mothers and how badly we had behaved. We asked God to forgive us for being such bad sons. We imagined if we could hug them, give them a kiss. We promised to work harder so they would not have to work anymore, but it was too late," is what they thought. After about 2 months at sea, Jose started
Holy
to find...
shit. Are you kidding me?
No.
Is this story legit?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Okay.
It gets longer.
How have we never heard of this?
I don't know. I think probably because it was a Mexican story, Mexican El Salvadorian story. So maybe that's why.
That's
Like, it's just
insane.
another country, so we didn't hear about it, but
Holy shit.
I know.
Okay.
After about 2 months at sea, Jose started to find a rhythm. So obviously nothing was ideal, but he did find a rhythm into what he was doing.
And they were just out in the boat,
Yeah, just floating.
pooping in the ocean.
Probably. If they
Gross.
had much poop, because they
I
were kind of
guess.
starving. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ezekiel did not find the same rhythm. He had become ill after eating raw seabirds and decided not to eat food after that. He was just like, I'm done. He could barely lift a water bottle to his mouth to drink. And whether it was because of physical or mental blocks, we don't know. But the two men made a pact. If Ezekiel survived, he would travel to El Salvador to visit Jose's mom. If Jose made it alive, he'd go back to Mexico, find Ezekiel's devout mother, who had remarried an evangelical preacher. He said, he asked me to tell his mother that he was sad he could not say goodbye and that she shouldn't make any more tamales for him. They should let him go, and he had gone with God. One morning, the men awoke, and Ezekiel said, I'm dying, I'm almost gone. Jose told him not to think like that and to just take a nap. But it wasn't long after that that Ezekiel passed.
Oh, how old was he?
They didn't say, but they said he was young.
Yeah. Okay.
Jose propped him up, and he said he kind of just acted like he didn't die. He said that was the only way that he could mentally handle this.
And keep going.
Yeah. So he would just talk to him still. Like, he would ask him questions and he would answer answer the question he just asked for, answering for Ezekiel. He said that about 6 days after Ezekiel died, he was sitting on the boat under a full moon. And he said, almost as if waking from a dream, he realized that he had been having a full on conversation with a corpse. And that worried him. So, to protect his sanity, he took Ezekiel's clothes and slipped his body into the water. He said he fainted after that. When he woke up, the reality of his situation hit him. He thought, what could I do alone without anyone to speak with? Why had he died and not me? I had invited him to fish. I blamed myself for his death. After Ezekiel's death, Jose did contemplate suicide, but he was religious and he was always taught that, you don't commit suicide or your soul won't go to heaven. So he didn't. Not saying that that's what I believe, just saying that's what he believed. He said, I would stroll back and forth on the boat and imagine that I was wandering the world. By doing this, I could make myself believe that I was actually doing something, not just sitting there thinking about dying. And it did mention in there that he saw several ships on the horizon, but none of them got close enough to actually see him and help him.
How horrible. Like knowing that you're so close.
Yeah. Yeah. Finally, one day he looked up and he saw the sky filled with shorebirds. And when he looked around, he saw an island. He said it didn't look bigger than a football field and it looked wild, like without cars or roads or homes. But after about an hour, he got close enough to the shore and he dove into the water. And he said he paddled like a turtle until a wave pushed him into shore. He said, I held a handful of sand like it was a treasure.
I would not have let my boat go.
I think at this point, he just needed land.
Yeah.
He slowly crawled naked through the forest, and he couldn't stand for very long before he would fall over.
Why was he naked?
I think his clothes fell off or like ripped off from
Oh.
just wear and then jumping in the water. And
Okay. Yeah.
he continued and he looked up and saw a small beach house. The house belonged to Amy Libcomido and Russell Lacredick, and unbeknownst to Jose, he had landed on one of the Marshall Islands.
What is that?
It's an island off. I don't know. It's an island.
Okay.
It's an island. It's inhabited by people, but it's kind of more remote.
Okay.
That's all I know about it.
Okay.
Russell said of the encounter, as I'm looking across, I see a white man there. he said he was husking and drying coconuts on the island. And the man is yelling. He looks weak and hungry. My first thought was, this person swam here. He must have fallen off a ship. The couple brought Jose into their home, fed him, and cared for him. Russell eventually sailed across their lagoon to the main town and asked the mayor for help. Within a few short hours, police and a nurse came to Jose's aid. They convinced him to get back on a boat, which, oof,
I would never.
I know, but he had to get off this little lagoon and into the city.
How horrible.
Yeah, so he did. And while there, a Norwegian anthropologist told the Marshall Islands Journal about Jose. So obviously, this story became pretty widely known. Reporters swarmed the area trying to talk to Jose. And while in the city, he started to get worse and worse. His feet and his legs were swollen, and the doctors thought that he had been deprived of water for so long that the tissue was just soaking up everything that it could and then swelling. But after 11 days, he became stable enough to travel back home to El Salvador to be with his family. Jose had anemia, and they believe that all of the raw meat he ate infected his liver with parasites. He wasn't sleeping well because he couldn't get Ezekiel out of his head. After he was strong enough, he kept his promise and traveled to Mexico to meet with Ezekiel's mother. He sat with her for 2 hours, answering all of her questions about Ezekiel. But the media sucks. And everybody's like, oh, is this story even real? Is this a hoax? Is this even real? You can't even do this. Like, this isn't even a thing. But time and time again, people prove that, yes, this is the way he would have traveled, if he was just drifting at sea. Yes, this is the storm that he went missing, and this is when we found him. Yes, we went back and talked to his boss who said he had radioed that he was missing.
So, how far did he travel?
Oh, I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
And apparently, Ezekiel's family ended up trying to sue Jose, saying that they didn't believe that he pushed Ezekiel's body overboard, that they believed he ate him. But Jose said that Ezekiel made him promise he would not eat him, and he even passed a lie detector test, proving that he didn't eat Ezekiel.
Could you imagine?
No.
Being that family that did that?
I don't understand what basis you could have to sue someone for that.
Literally, like if they're starving.
Yeah.
And are going to die themselves.
Yeah. Jose was left with long-term health and physical issues, but he was alive. He had traveled on the ocean over 7,000 miles and for 438 days.
What?
Over a year he was on the ocean.
Holy shit.
Yeah. He said, I suffered hunger, thirst, and extreme loneliness and didn't take my life. You only get one chance to live, so appreciate it. Today, Jose lives in El Salvador in a small town surrounded by land as far as from the water as he can get.
That's crazy.
Isn't that insane?
Okay. I wanted to say that can't be real. That's
I know.
Crazy.
Isn't that insane?
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So that is the story of the perseverance of Jose Salvador Alvarenga.
Liked that much better than mine.
Yeah, that was much better.
So, are we ready?
I am ready.
I don't think you are. The other day, I saw a man rob the Apple store. They tell me I'm an eyewitness.
Oh, man.
I ordered a chicken. Oh, I did that one last week, bitches. I used to work at the calendar factory, but I got fired for taking a couple days off.
These are so bad.
Yeah, I love them. If you're American when you go into the bathroom and American when you come out, what are you when you're in the bathroom?
European.
Yeah. And final one. You know, I'm only familiar with 25 letters in the alphabet. I don't know why.
Well, if you want more of these great jokes and lovely humor, join our Patreon. It's $3 level. You get a sticker with our lovely faces and a bonus episode every month.
Which
you can
is
also, oh yeah, sorry,
always super chaotic.
super chaotic, and we love it, and it's fun, and it's a great time.
Yeah.
And find us on all of our social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
And if you would like to rate and review us, you can do so on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Thanks for listening, and we look forward to bringing you 2 new stories next week.
Bye. Bye.